A very good morning and thank you so much for joining us on Media Monitor. Now, in today's installment of Media Monitor, we are going to deviate a little from the tradition of the show because we've also joined the hype around Wednesday's local government elections by revisiting and analyzing the topical and interesting facets of these elections. Now, we're going to kick off the show by taking a statistic overview of the Big Five election-related stories that shook social media this week. Two of the front runners of this year's elections are currently holding their rallies today. And of course, our reporters are on the scene and will be giving us an update on these. But how was the media coverage of political parties? Do stay tuned to find out more. Professor Somadoda Figeni will unpack for us the importance of these elections as well as the upswing of independent candidates, while the IEC Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Tseritselane, will of course take us through their state of readiness of the polls. Up first, it's 900 hours Central African time. These are the news headlines. As the end of the campaigning period approaches, tonight political parties are making their final push for votes ahead of Wednesday's local government elections. The National Union of Mine Workers has confirmed that all its members at Eskom will embark on a strike as of August the 8th. And the soccer under-23 national coaches proved to be spot on in including two overage players for the Rio Olympic team. Defender Eric Matoho scored the crucial goal, and goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune saved Kaizer Chiefs as they beat Orlando Pirates 2-0 in the Carling Black Label Cup. Now, joining us on this special edition of the show is, of course, IEC Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Tseritselane, SABC Specialist Political Researcher, Mr. Ronesh Darwaj, and, of course, beside me, Dinilonhlanga Mekuto, who is our digital reporter. Very good morning to all of you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Alicia.
All right. Now, let's have a look at what made people talk on social media. Danny, that is why you're sitting right next to me. Mr. Tseritselane, I know you can't really say much, but we want to hear your comments regardless of what you thought on some of the tweets that have been coming through. Danny, what was the top and leading story this week in social media?
Well, this week it was the EFF councillor, Mr. Thabo Maboja, who happened to post a seemingly racist tweet on Facebook, and the electoral court took that matter, and as we know now, the man is no longer standing as a councillor of the EFF. So that racist issue, and there was also the issue of the NFP not being able to participate in these upcoming elections on Wednesday. So those were the issues that really stood out this week.
Gentlemen, what did you think in terms of research, Ronesh? What happened there?
I think the big story for me was the NFP one. You know, obviously the NFP approached the electoral court the first time. It lost its case. Then it approached another court. Then it went back to the electoral court. And, you know, we kind of knew that the NFP's chances were very slim because they were trying to contest municipalities in KZN, you know, and we have a huge number of municipalities in KZN. You know, I always cite the example of the ACDP back in 2006. They were shut out of the local elections in that year in the Cape Town Metro. So it was just a single council. What the ACDP did back then, they approached the electoral court. Eventually, they lost the electoral court case. Then they went to the Con Court. They won their case. And you know, obviously, they were allowed to take part in those elections. But I think with the NFP, it was a very, very different scenario because remember, they registered here in Gauteng. They've got lots of supporters in Gauteng. But I think the real dilemma for the IEC would have been KZN because KZN has lots of local and district municipalities. So to include the NFP on 3 ballots on the ward, you know, a different ward ballot for each municipality. Then we got the district councils as well. I think it would have been a totally logistical nightmare for the IEC.
Mr. Tselane, what did you think? Was there nothing brought forward to the directorate according to what you saw on social media trends this week?
Well, the two issues that you have referred to, which is the matter relating to the NFP as well as the EFF candidate in Swani, are matters that obviously were dealt with by the Commission. And in relation to the matter related to the NFP, we indicated from the outset that we derive no pleasure in the NFP being disqualified. But from our side, we had to apply the rules, and the rules state that a political party must meet certain minimum requirements in order for that party to comply with our requirements. And unfortunately, NFP did not comply. But we are satisfied that the leadership of the NFP has actually been explaining to their members and supporters, and that the issue is being dealt with in a very responsible way. The matter also of the EFF, the leadership of the EFF also distanced itself from the candidate and indicated their support for the electoral laws, particularly the code of conduct. And I think it's a positive thing, and I think most of the political parties can actually learn from the steps taken by the EFF in relation to this matter.
Thank you so much for that. Dini, what else was big news in terms of campaigning and social media this week?
Not necessarily this week, Alicia, but throughout the campaigns, we noticed that the three big parties in the country, namely the ANC, the DA and the EFF, took onto social media in a big way. And people took the stories that were on mainstream media or traditional media and started talking about them on social media. And one of the things that caught people's attention was the dabbing. And dabbing is a new dance move. I'm sure if you're a young person, you know about it, or if you're a follower of the ruling party, you know about it, because they really took onto that one.
There's
and
the president dabbing
the president dabbing there, and they are dabbing to victory. That's what they are saying. Dabbing to Siyangoba, which we know is happening today. And there was also the issue of racism, with the DA and the ANC really engaging or, having public spats on this issue, with the president saying a party of snakes could never really give birth to something holy or something innocent.
What were the tweets saying there, Dean? If you can just give us very quickly.
A couple of tweets that we had.
Yes.
So this one is from one of our reporters, Mahlatse Gallens. She says, Zuma says DA is like apartheid architects, NP, and that's a snake. Or how can we expect a snake to give birth and not, what does it say? Over this week,
10,000 posters saying Honor Madiba's dream vote DA will go up across South Africa.
Okay, that's another story that the DA was engaging on, the issue of Mandela. And we also know that the Mandela family came out with Mandla saying Mandela is a person of the ANC and not a person of the DA. And there's also an ANC member who also engaged on this issue on social media, Hesetu Hassane, who actually quoted Mandela from an article that was written in 2000.
What did he say?
So this article says, former President Nelson Mandela on Saturday labeled the Democratic Alliance a party of white bosses and black stooges, which only cared for black voters on the eve of the election. Speaking at the Congress of COSATU, this is what Mandela had said then. So this is just saying that the ANC can lay claim to the name Mandela, and having the DA use the name of Mandela in their campaigning is not what Mandela would have been happy with, because Mandela had his own reservations about the Democratic Alliance. And people started engaging on that. And there was a very interesting tweet from a person called Will African, who seems to be on the fence of this issue on racism. And he also quoted both parties, saying Zuma has a point. I also don't understand black people who vote for the DA. But with equal sentiment, it's beyond me how black people vote for the ANC. So had his reservations about both parties. But what was interesting is that a lot of these parties never really took this issue of racism up and really engaged in it. But people were actually talking about it on social media, which is maybe something that the political parties can look at and find a solution to this racism. As we can see with the EFF Councillor Maboja this week. He also posted a racist Facebook post. But fortunately, the IC managed to deal with that one decisively.
Mr. Talan, I mean, it's very interesting how now, campaigning has reached far beyond just parties going on the ground. It's also on social media. Does the IEC monitor that as well? What has been said on social media?
There's no regulation for social media, as you may be aware. We had conversation with ICASA sometime last week, and then we were trying to find out as to whether they've got measures and mechanisms to deal with social media and its impact. And they also indicated that they have not actually looked into this particular issue that seriously, but they're not empowered in law to regulate social media. So We of course are also in social media as an organization, and we believe that it's an important platform that we're using to reach out, particularly to the young people. But that is the extent to which we can go by using the platform, and then also obviously just looking at how people respond to a message in those platforms.
Ron, very quickly.
I just want to make a comment about the Madiba thing, the tussle between the ANC and the DA. Remember, this whole Mandela controversy with the DA didn't actually start now. You would recall just before the 2014 elections, the DA launched with much fanfare on Twitter, on Facebook, Know Your DA campaign.
Yes.
And they had posters, they had tweets, they had pictures of Nelson Mandela embracing Helen Suzman from the Democratic Party, from the Progressive Party, in those days. And, obviously the ANC, was very vocal at the time as well. But I think also you've got to remember that Nelson Mandela is and was a global icon. So the appropriation of the Mandela name, despite the protests from the ANC, despite the protests from Winnie Madikizela Mandela this morning and the family, Nelson Mandela is a global icon. And, this whole issue of the apartheid linking with the DA as well, you also got to remember that the ANC was the party that actually absorbed the National Party, and it rewarded, Martinus van Schalkwyk for that constituency that was brought into the ANC fold back in the early 2000s. So there is a bit of contradiction between the ANC and the DA. So this, this kind of tussle that's going on. Obviously, it's politics as well. So I think when we're framing the story, we got to remember all these factors.
Denny?
Well, an important thing to note is that whenever you're on social media, you must also keep in mind that it's a public platform.
Absolutely.
So even though some people might have views that are private, taking it to a public platform might put you in a compromising situation, as we have seen with the EFF councillor. So people must always know that even if you put something and delete it, someone might have screen grabbed it, and it might be around for years to come. So just watch your conduct and just behave properly.
And very importantly, don't tweet, don't message when you're very emotional. Just keep away.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it on this discussion. We're going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we're going to cross live to our reporters covering for us the last political rallies. Do stay tuned.
You the elections manifestos.
We have taken you on the campaign trails, the rallies and the door-to-door campaigns, and we caught the tension on tape.
And even the drama when internal battles spilled into the public eye. Our cameras kept on rolling.
And now, we bring you the race for seats. A record number of 63,654 candidates want your vote.
As the numbers trickle in, we'll give you live updates from across the country and from the hotspots. While the police keep a watchful eye, so will Africa.
Wherever you are, stay updated.
Wherever you are, stay updated.
Wherever you are, stay updated.
The SABC, the nerve center of South Africa's elections news.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Now, the ANC is wrapping up its local government election campaign with the Siyanqoba rally today at the FNB Stadium in Soweto. President Jacob Zuma will deliver the keynote address in a few hours' time. And our reporter, Patricia Versage, is there to give us the latest on this event. Patricia, a very good morning to you. Do give us the latest. It is the showdown before the big event on Wednesday. What's happening there?
Well, good morning, Alicia, and of course to our viewers at home. Alicia, you have just rightfully put it correctly. It is, the final push for all political parties in the country before the August 3rd, of course, municipal elections that will take place on Wednesday this coming week. And of course, the ANC, the ruling party in South Africa, is having their final lap to, of course, the elections on Wednesday. And today they're having their traditional spectacular, it is a crowd puller, the Siyangoba rally here at Ellis Park in Johannesburg. And I can tell you the mood is starting to pick up, the energy is starting to build up in the stadium. Slowly but surely the crowds are flocking in. So of course the stadium can take a capacity of about 62,000 people, and that is what we expect to see today. The party is confident that they will be able to fill up this stadium. They've also throughout the week said that they believe that they will actually pull a crowd larger than what the stadium can accommodate, saying that there's a stadium next door. They feel that if the crowd is more than that 62,000 that I've just mentioned, then they will accommodate the other crowd in the, of course, next stadium. So here things seem to be going well so far. Of course, security is, very tight outside as well. Later in the program, we'll see a lot of ANC leaders making their way here, and a lot of them also will be addressing the crowd here. I'm sure you can hear these sounds in the background as the crowd is starting to warm up. We saw, of course, members of the ruling party's military wing, Umkhonto Wesizwe, taking to the ground there in the stadium, entertaining the crowd as the energy is building up. But of course, later on, as the day gains momentum, more activity, a lot of artists are set to take the stage and entertain the crowd here. But Alicia, throughout the program, we'll be interviewing a lot of ANC leaders and, talk to them about how their campaign went on the ground. We know that they've been very much active on the ground with door-to-door campaigns, etc. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about some of the, accusations that have been hurled towards the ruling party from opposition parties, how they take that, and just policy issues, and whether they are ready for the municipal elections on Wednesday. I think for now, we're giving back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much for that live update there. Patricia Visagie on the scene at the FNB Stadium, where, of course, the ANC is doing its final rally. And, of course, SABC News will be carrying that broadcast. But let's now focus our attention to the fact that the newcomer in these elections, the EFF, is also holding its final rally today at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. And for the latest, our reporter Alderin Sampier is there. Alderin, a very good morning to you. I understand that you have Mr. Godresh Gadi with you. Take it away.
Well, definitely. Tell you what, as the ANC's Siyangoba rally is taking place in Ellis Park, right here at the Peter Mokaba Stadium, will be the EFF's own rally, which is called Tela Tupa. It will be happening right here at the Peter Mokaba Stadium, and EFF members are making their way through to the stadium. And of course, it is a show of force, and we've been saying this, that the EFF is taking the ANC head on. And if you remember the speeches given by Julius Malema throughout the EFF's rally, is that what you should understand about the EFF's campaign is that the EFF is competing with the ANC, not with any other opposition party, even the official opposition party, the DA. And as you said, right here, joined by the Secretary General of the EFF, Godresh Gadi. It must be an exciting moment for the EFF today, considering that you're going into these municipal elections and it's the first time it is a test for the EFF.
Definitely, we are very excited. We have done our work on the ground. We have moved from one village to the other, from one municipality to the other, from one province to the other. We have been speaking to our people door to door, to street to street, in churches, in taxi ranks, in bus ranks, in train station. And this will be the culmination of the hard work of the activists of the economic freedom fighters.
One thing that we've spoken about with Julius Malema, the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, is how it seems that the constituency of the EFF is taking a new shape. We're seeing a lot of old people also come through to the EFF's rallies. The consideration has been that the EFF is mostly pulling through the young people, but now we see more old people actually coming through to EFF rallies.
Well, our old people, our grannies, our parents have realized that they've been told a lie about the Economic Freedom Fighters as an organization that is going to eliminate and eradicate social grants to the elderly, the disabled, and the social assistant for child support grant. Now the truth have synced to our parents. The reality has come to bear the fruit, and we have spoken to our people that it is a lie. Actually, we are the only political party that says our people deserves much more better than they are currently getting. Their social grant should be doubled. So the old people have now realized that, well, this was a lie about this organization. This is the only organization in Parliament, in its campaign rallies, prior to 2014, prior to 2016, it has been saying that the social grant for the elderly, the pensioners, should be doubled.
Well, the EFF also come into this election with literally a blow to your campaign, considering that you're contesting every ward in the country. But yet in the city of Tshwane, it's a blow to the party, considering that you have one of your ward candidates who has been disqualified by the IEC.
Well, that was a very reckless statement by a member and an activist of the Economic Freedom Fighters, and we welcome the judgment by the Electoral Court. The court have spoken. Ours is to welcome the decision of the court. We do not have the time to be defending people who make reckless statements. We are in a campaign mood. We want to be in power in all metros and all municipalities in South Africa. And well, it's not necessarily a blow, considering that not even a single political party, including any other ones, the ruling party and the official opposition, are actually contesting 100% of the wards, of the 4,392 wards. One is contesting 4,366, the other one 4,373, and for the Economic Freedom Fighters just to lose one ward, considering that there are 4,392 wards, it's not necessarily much of a blow, because we will have the PR votes in that particular ward.
And just quickly, we need to wrap up. Are you going to take any action against that member of yours in the city of Tshwane who has now been disqualified by the IEC? As the party, are you taking any disciplinary action against him?
Definitely, immediately after the elections, we will do a post-mortem of the processes leading up to the elections, our campaigns, and the conduct of our members. And at an appropriate time, we'll make a determination as to what is the next step forward.
Okay, that's Godrich Gadi, the Secretary General of the EFF, and we're right here at Peter Mokaba Stadium, and it all culminates here. What we have to wait and see is whether the 45,000 members that Julius Malema has been promising that will fill up this stadium, whether those people will result in their X marks next to the EFF come August the 3rd, and whether the EFF will have any municipality under its control.
Thank you so much for that live update. Alderin Sampier, live to us from the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane at the EFF's final rally. Let's now also welcome this morning political analyst Professor Somadoda Figeni, who's joining us from our Pretoria studios. A very good morning to you, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Alicia. Good morning to my colleagues there, and good morning to your viewers.
Thank you so much, Prof. Now, the media has done extensive coverage on political parties and their activities in the lead up to Wednesday's polls. Issues ranging from educational information about elections, promises of better service delivery, voices of ordinary citizens, to more disturbing trends like political killings all hog the media headlines. Let's take a look now at the graph that we have and see in terms of coverage what happened there. All right, we're going to move along before we get that graph. Let's quickly have a look now first. I mean, for most people, I suppose, the big question relates to the fairness of the media coverage. Mr. Tsalane, what is the IEC rules regarding this? Were there any serious discrepancies there?
No. Remember that there are quite a number of players in this space. ICASA plays a very important role, and because of their role, as a regulator. We have had conversations with them, and they have assured us that that aspect is covered. They will deal with that issue efficiently, and immediately before we announce the results of the election, we will have a conversation with ICASA again to find out how far they've actually gone, so that we can actually be able to announce the results and see to what extent we have ensured that these elections are free and fair. So the issue of media coverage, particularly by the broadcasters, it's an important aspect which we will have more information from ICASA before we make an announcement. They have committed that they will give us some kind of a preliminary statement ahead of the announcement of the elections.
Well, we do have that graphic ready now, Mr. Zelane. Let's all have a look. And Ronesh, maybe you can take us through. It looks like the ANC has the big piece there with 54.5% and the DA 19%. And of course, the EFF, they're 9.9%. And then it's all the rest of the smaller parties in terms of media coverage. Take us through that.
I think very important to remember, Alicia, is that the ANC is the incumbent party. The bigger players in any election will get more of the media coverage compared to the smaller players. But the unique thing about local government elections is that you need to pay special attention to the smaller players, like the ratepayer associations, your community-based organizations, those kind of players. It does not necessarily have to be, a live coverage of the party's manifesto launch. At the SABC, we have multiple platforms. We have radio, we have television, we have current affairs, those kind of avenues available to the smaller players. So those stories can be covered via a news story, a 30-second soundbite, those kind of things. But just to reiterate, parties like the ANC, yes, they will get more coverage. Naturally, they are the incumbent party. They are the governing party. The DA is the official opposition. The EFF is very newsworthy, regardless whether this is their first election and there's no yardstick actually to measure them, because obviously they weren't around in 2011. So we will cover the EFF in terms of their newsworthiness and their potential to actually win a huge percentage of the vote after August the 3rd. So the graph that you're seeing, I think it looks very fair. The ANC, close to 51%, the DA 19% official opposition, the EFF, their leaders on the ground campaigning vigorously, just doing lots of groundwork, with their ward candidates, their PR candidates, and just going back to the smaller players, they will be given attention.
Professor, what did you think about the media coverage when it came to the campaigning in the build-up to the local government elections?
Well, I do think that it was a fair coverage of an election that is very intense and sometimes confusing. And I think the dependence on the surveys might just prove to be a bit tricky this time around, because you've seen what has happened in Britain, where the surveys had predicted that the Conservative Party would lose, or at least would be below 50%. We are entering some new terrain where indeed it is clear that this is fiercely contested election, and it is clear that ANC may lose some ground, especially in some of the metros. And we may have a situation where you do not have obvious majorities in some of the metros. But now, coming back to the chart that you presented, I do think that it's not only the size of the coverage, but also sometimes it's the type of the stories. Because I do think that there were negative stories emanating from within the ANC, just like the story on the NFP. Ironically, it was covering its obvious ousting from the election process in the main.
Prof mentions a very interesting point then. I was going to ask this because you made a relevance to it, Ronesh, the fact that the newsworthiness of the stories, what determines those numbers then?
I think, like Professor Fikeni says, at the SABC, as a public broadcaster, as part of the media, we got to watch those stories. What will grip our audiences, radio, television, digital. We look at the kind of stories. Local elections are very different to national and provincial elections. Local elections, we look at the smaller players. I'll give you a very good example of a very small player in 2011. No one's heard of them, the Karoo Gemeenskap Partij. It's a small council of 7 seats. They took on the ANC, they took on the DA, they won the council. They got 3 seats compared to the ANC's 2 and the DA's 2, and they got control of the council. Then they went into a coalition with the ANC to get control of the district council. Those are the stories, you know, especially around local elections, that we need to hear and the media needs to hear. So like the Prof is saying, independence will prove very vital. He also touched on the issue of surveys. You know, one of the very prominent surveys on Twitter, on Facebook, you know, are the Ipsos ones.
Yes.
Remember, these are just surveys. These are just polls. The only 2 issues I have with the Ipsos ones is that those surveys were done via telephone. So obviously there's a margin of error that comes in, I think about 2 to 2.5%. And then the other issue was that there was a huge amount of undecided voters, you know, between 15 and 19%. And that huge amount of undecided voters could possibly hold a swing that could give the ANC, you know, leverage over the DA or even perhaps the EFF.
Now I have a special question for you, Mr. Tselane, before we wrap up this segment. Of course, all eyes will be on Tlokwe, and of course, if you are the other hotspots, as the IEC, do you think that you are ready for the elections and you're going to make sure that you deliver free and fair elections in that regard?
Definitely we will deliver elections, and they will be free and fair. In Tlokwe is not really a hotspot as such, in a sense that the issue that we were dealing with related to the voters' roll and the judgment of the Constitutional Court as well as the Electoral Court. But in relation to the community, it's all systems go, everybody is happy and excited about the elections, and then we will definitely have a free and fair elections in Tlokwe and everywhere in the country.
All right, well, we're going to continue with our special election show after this short break. Do stay with us. This is Media Monitor.
The first democratic vote. In 1994, we were there.
To usher in democracy and bring about a new South Africa. Over the years, blow-by-blow coverage of the elections. And now, we'll be bringing you
the numbers as they come in on your TV, computer, and even on your phone. Well, think about it as your personal guide to the elections.
Get to know why your municipality is hotly contested.
Wherever you are, stay updated.
The SABC, the nerve center of South Africa's elections news.
Africa is growing. As a result, it's also advancing the way it does things.
Any developments in technology can really do a lot to boost growth.
On Network, we'll show you how technology is improving the lives of Africans.
The life of an LED globe is 15 times longer than what they have currently.
We also have new gadgets, games, and the continent's innovative technology ideas. That's Network with me, Siphumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 19:30 Central African Time.
Welcome back. Now, tomorrow and Tuesday have been set aside for special voting. And according to the IEC, the number of this year's special vote applications is 3 times more than the last local governments. Now, the 2016 local government elections have been described as the most highly contested elections since the 1994 polls. I mean, this is very encouraging, Ntate Tselane, but what do you think made people register in their numbers for these elections particularly?
I think there's a lot of interest in these elections, largely because there are quite a number of important issues that people are dealing with and they've been raising. And there's a lot of commotion and movement also within the political parties themselves. And as a result of that, I think it has created a certain level of excitement on our elections. And then we are very, very happy that we've had such great numbers of people registered. I mean, to have 26,333,335 really shows that our people are interested in participating in this election, and we expect the turnout to be very, very high.
Prof, what did you think? What made these elections so exciting in terms of why people want to vote?
For many years, ANC has been a majority party, almost uncontested. And for the first time now, in the highly concentrated metros, you do have possibility of opposition reducing ANC's majority. And of course, they are mainly basing that in the last national and provincial general election, where ANC seemed to lose quite significantly, at times as much as 10%. So they see that trend continuing. So the sense of vulnerability of the ruling party, the introduction of the EFF, and the fact that the DA has almost become more fixated in getting into the black townships and the ANC traditional constituencies, all those combined together with the ANC's own internal ramblings and factions has made this election very exciting.
Ranesh, what did you think?
Yeah, obviously local elections, very exciting times. Again, taking you back to 2011, there was lots of interest around the 2011 local elections. There was this tussle again between the ANC and the DA. At that time, Julius Malema and all, his so-called comrades were still within the ANC fold, and there were lots of posturing by each, one person calling the other the tea girl and the garden boy. So that excitement was there, and that's the reason we saw the highest turnout ever for local elections. That was close to 58%. Going back to what Ntate Tselane was talking about, the turnout, I think we have 26.3 million voters registered for these elections. The IEC has set itself a target of 17 million, which roughly kind of translates into 65% turnout. I have my doubts that we will get 65%, but people are excited because these elections, the EFF is just like, just revving things up. The ANC is taking notice. The DA is getting on the wrong side of the ANC, and vice versa. So people on the outside are watching excitingly, and they want to see what actually transpires, by Thursday morning, Friday morning. The metros, obviously, the metros, if we look at the three highly contested ones, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Johannesburg, any party to win Johannesburg, they need to secure Soweto, which is South Africa's biggest black township, which has a population of 1.2 million people and registered voters, close to 600,000 to 700,000. So for the DA to actually make a huge dent within the ANC's numbers in Johannesburg, they need to do something spectacular in Soweto. In Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, yes, the DA will get close to mid-40s. The ANC will touch around 46, 47%. Coalition politics again. And I think the real test for the ANC and for the DA is fine, coalition politics will enter these elections, but how stable will those coalitions be post-August the 3rd, when those councils sit? Will those coalitions just be for the sake of coalitions? Will we see the EFF, especially, going to those coalitions?
We're going to talk about coalitions, just now, Ranesh. But I just want to find out from the Prof. Prof, speak to this. Have you noted any shifting voter patterns in terms of how easy it is for one to change his or her political ideology? What do you think about that?
Well, remember that the politics of ideology have largely died down in many instances. People join parties because they want to secure seats or they've been expelled from their parties, and you do not have a deep philosophical and ideological discourse. Of course, to some degree, the politics of the left brought by the EFF has forced many players to sort of identify their ideological position. But the other point I wanted to make is that, interestingly, in South Africa, even in local government elections, you find that national policy position and national leadership tend to be more profiled than their local counterparts.
Dr. Salan, what do you think about that?
In terms of the numbers and the level of excitement. Most of the political parties have really taken this campaign very seriously. A lot of effort, lots of resources have been put into the campaign. And we are excited from our side because we always say to the political parties as our partners that they've got the responsibility of inciting and exciting people to be able to participate in the process. And thus far, I think they've taken the challenge and they've been doing very well. From our side also, our campaign in terms of trying to get as many people as possible to register and also to be part of the process has actually been very successful. We've been very, very active on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and other platforms where we can actually be able to reach out to the young people.
Absolutely.
And then the majority of young people have taken advantage of this platform.
What did you think about the youth in terms of voter registration, Ranesh? What does research say?
You know, just before we actually go on to that, I must touch upon this. The IEC released their application, their app, a couple of days ago. Beautiful application, I must tell you, because I used it. I installed it on my phone, and I was fascinated. You put your ID number, it gives you where you're registered, and it will give you how many ballots you're entitled to, and the parties and the candidates in that particular voting district, in that particular metro. So you know, those kind of initiatives that Ntate Selane is talking about, you know, that will get the youth involved. They're very active on Twitter, because I follow the IEC on Twitter. They're very active on Facebook. So the youth is interested, and they are tweeting, they are Facebooking, they are Instagramming pictures. You know, obviously, you know, the real test is going to be when we go out to the voting booths. Obviously, you can't take a selfie or a thumb B inside the voting station. But when you get outside the voting station, everybody's just going to have this, and they're going to tweet this. And you know, that level of excitement and enthusiasm is going to be there on election day.
Professor, I mean, I think you spoke to this a little bit earlier on, but do you think that the issue also of service delivery rate was also a very big contributing factor as to why people wanted to register to vote for these elections?
Well, to the extent that people after 22 years might be feeling frustrated that some of the promises of liberation have not been realized, and also the fact that the financial and economic crisis which has impacted on our country, particularly on the youth, has been a big factor. And lastly, the very student politics that we saw, fees must fall, insourcing must fall, roads must fall, have energized youth as political players. They are no longer just people now who shy away from politics. So I think that in itself is going to be an interesting part in bringing the new, fresh voters into the role.
Thank you so much for that. That's where we wrap up that particular discussion. But we're going to have more in elections shortly after this break. Do stay with us.
No, they haven't. Do you know why?
Well, we didn't know. Firstly, we'll ask.
I can tell you.
Why?
They say you're selling out.
Why?
Well, I guess that's a question you need to engage them.
Why would the African Union try and separate human rights and women's rights?
Women's rights are indeed human rights.
So we need to be asking ourselves, what kind of society are we? What kind of family structures do we have where fathers turn on their daughters?
If a policeman, is seen to be accessing psychological services, couldn't that be seen as a sign of weakness?
People are waiting for somebody to discover them.
Absolutely.
And that's not everybody's story, am I right? I mean, there's so many of us who can be the best and stars, but you can't sit there and wait for somebody to say, I think what you're doing is great.
Which are so different to his past.
I really wish I could say thanks to him. And man, I'm the man. I make coffee and I'm proud of it.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. Now, with the 2016 local government being so highly contested, especially in big metros, political scholars are forecasting that we might see more coalitions than ever before, an option that most political leaders have publicly announced that they would consider. Now, you spoke to this earlier, Ranesh. Where did you get this information from?
I suppose it's just theories in my head, but obviously you need to read widely. Yeah, so these coalitions, I think the real test after August the 3rd, when the council sits, within 14 days of actually, contesting the election, I think, is to actually see the durability of those coalitions. And you know, the EFF is going to be a major player in these elections. They will be a major player in council seats, in you know, constructing these coalitions. And are we likely to see the EFF, you know, causing disruptions in those councils, like we've seen in the National Assembly, like we've seen in various provincial legislatures, like here in Gauteng, especially? So again, you know, winning a council or entering into into coalitions, you know, are the kind of stories we need to watch out for. But I think the bigger story that's going to emerge after August the 3rd is going to be, you know, in the highly contested metros like Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, Tshwane, for example. You know, look at those coalitions and how stable those coalitions are actually going to be.
Professor, I mean, as a scholar, I mean, do give us, what are some of the scenarios that could potentially lead to coalitions?
Well, if no party gets 50 plus 1%, it means you do not have an outright majority. Each party would have to look for the partners in order to pass that threshold. And in this particular case, you find that most of the opposition parties would like to join forces in order to take over from the ANC. So ANC will have its hands full and struggling to get coalition partners unless it promises, particularly independence and community organization, some disproportionate allocation of positions in the mayoral committees and other strategic deployments. But also, these coalitions might be more stable if any of the major parties are very close to 50%, let's say in the late 40s, because there you can pick up independence, you can pick up a few other smaller parties. But if they are in the 30s or 20s, then it means you have an inevitable situation where EFF and DA as major players may have to come together in most places, except of course in KZN, where IFP is a big player. Then in that case, you can imagine parties with very diametrically different constituencies and ideologies, such as the DA and EFF. It will be a very unstable constituency, government. At the same time, the ANC supporters or constituencies and the unions may not psychologically be ready to accept such an outcome. So they may protest and weaken that very same fragile coalition.
Ndatizelani, is this something that the IEC has maybe thought about? What happens in that instance?
Well, our responsibility is obviously to make sure that we put people into councils through the democratic processes.
Yes.
And then what happens thereafter in terms of the coalition, it's not really the responsibility of the commission. And then we hope that whatever arrangement that would be entered into would be arrangements that would ensure the sustainability of the municipalities. Because, you know, we always say that political leaders as well as people who are elected into public office, they must understand that they are ambassadors of a democratic system. So they can either enhance or discredit a democratic system through their actions.
Thank you so much. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you, Professor Dr. Figeni, joining us from our Pretoria studios. IEC Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Terry Zelan, and of course, Mr. Ronesh Darwaj, our very own researcher, political researcher. He will be with us in Pretoria covering those elections. And to you, thank you so much for joining Media Monitor. We're going to take a quick ad break. We're going to be back after this.
Of the pop and lock, and whatever this is. The party train conductor, all aboard. The answer is yes, you are that guy, and we salute you party comrade. Join the movement online.
He appealed for the disruptions to come to an end so the future of the children is not compromised.
The union said the latest offer by Eskom will condemn its members to poverty.
Samples from the 2012 London Olympic Games and 2014 Sochi Winter Games will also be retested.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. Well, it seems that we've been giving a little bit more time. It seems the discussion is so nice. And Ntate, just your closing arguments. I mean, when are the results expected to be announced?
Well, in terms of the electoral legislation, we are expected to announce the results within 7 days. But we always try to ensure that the results of the elections are announced within 48 hours. But one of the most important things is that in terms of the Municipal Electoral Act, we have to deal with all the objections that we refer to as Section 65 objections before we can announce the results of an election. So we're going to have to assess and see all the issues that are being raised by different people, whether political party agents or ordinary people. And if those objections are material to the outcome of the results of the election, the Commission will then deal with those issues, finalize them, and then after finalizing them, it is then that we can announce the results of the election. So we will try to make sure that we are able to do this within the time that is as short as possible, so that the municipalities can start being constituted.
All right. Professor, I mean, in your reading, as we go into the elections on Wednesday, what is your general overview of the political climate?
Well, I do think that the political climate has just been fine, except for the isolated incidents of candidates being assassinated, and also the intensity of contestation, and the fact that parties have been able to penetrate into areas which used to be no-go areas. That in itself, I do think that it's an encouraging part. But of course, it will be how parties accept the outcome and conduct themselves, and how parties negotiate the formation of coalitions where these are needed. That will be the ultimate test of whether our democracy is deepening and consolidating or weakening.
Thank you so much, Professor Somat Dotafige, in the live to us from our Pretoria studios. Ronesh, what will you be doing? I know you're going to be in Pretoria, but what is going to be your role during these elections?
Obviously, political research. I'll be assisting all the analysts. We've got a panel of election analysts that will be housed at the Pretoria Results Operations Center. In between interviews here and there, anybody requesting information, any of our SABC platforms, radio, television, digital, you guys, whatever information you need, research is going to be there out in full force. And we'll work very closely with the teams. We'll set up interviews, we'll set up analyst briefings, those kind of things.
That's a final word. What can we expect on Wednesday?
We expect and want to urge our people to go out in great numbers, to go to a voting station, and people must remember those who will be going to vote in metro councils. They will be given 2 ballot papers, one being for the ward candidate, and the second one being for proportional representation. And those who will be in local councils, they will get 3 ballot papers, one being for a ward, the second being for the local council, and the third one being for the district council.
All right.
But people must not worry about all these complexities. They just go to the voting station and they will be given the relevant ballot papers.
Thank you so much for joining us, and as well as Ronesh and you at home, thank you so much for watching our show, Media Monitor. We hope that you will join us again, same time and place next week. I'm Alicia Jali here on the SABC News channel. Do have yourself a blessed Sunday.